All right, so let's dive into this deep dive.
Oh.
You guys have given us a ton of research on something that I feel like is constantly in the headlines and honestly probably causing some arguments at the dinner table.
Yeah.
Like, how are smartphones actually impacting kids?
Mm-hmm.
Is it all bad, or are we like overreacting as a society?
Right.
So we're here to kind of sort through it all and get to the heart of the matter.
Yeah.
We've got studies, we've got expert opinions, we've got real world examples.
Absolutely.
We're going to cover everything from how smartphones might be like literally affecting kids' brains all the way to, navigating that whole online world and even how tech can be used for good.
It's so fascinating because it's like we're living through this huge experiment in real time, right? Smartphones are everywhere, but we're just beginning to kind of wrap our heads around how they're actually shaping young minds.
Right, and one thing that kind of jumps out from all this research is this idea that maybe too much screen time is actually linked to like developmental delays,
Yeah.
especially for younger kids.
Bye.
For sure. There's this one case study that really got to me. It was a child psychologist was talking about this 8-year-old patient who was having a really hard time like focusing because of too much phone use.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, does that ring true with anything you've seen?
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
And the science actually backs it up too.
Okay.
A child's brain is just so adaptable, it's literally rewiring itself based on their experiences.
Yay.
So if a big chunk of those experiences are just, sitting there staring at a screen,
Right.
it can actually like make it harder for them to develop these really important skills like focus memory, even language.
Oh, wow.
You can almost think of it like a diet.
Okay.
The brain needs all sorts of different nutrients, right?
Yeah.
Real world interaction, hands-on play, even boredom.
Boredom.
Boredom to actually fully develop.
Yeah, I remember reading somewhere that like boredom can actually be a good thing because it forces kids to get creative and figure things out on their own.
Exactly. That's when their imaginations can run wild.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not just what's going on like inside their heads, right?
Yeah.
We also have to think about like that whole online safety thing.
Absolutely.
Because, the internet can be a scary place.
Yeah.
Especially for kids.
It's a jungle out there.
They can stumble across things that they really shouldn't be seeing.
That's a huge concern, right?
Yeah.
How do we protect kids without completely like isolating them from the digital world?
Right.
It's this tricky balance, like
Yeah.
open communication with your kids using parental controls.
Oh, yeah. Parental controls.
Those are definitely key. I think we need to be talking to kids about the dangers that are out there online
Mm-hmm.
and giving them the skills to actually navigate those risks. And parental controls, while they're not perfect, can be a helpful tool to like filter content and set some screen time limits.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on those strategies?
Well, parental controls sound great in theory, but I feel like kids are pretty good at getting around those.
Right.
Like I used to be a kid.
Yeah.
I was sneaky.
And even with like the open communication thing, it's hard to know what kids are really up to online,
You're absolutely right. It's not a perfect solution.
Right.
It's more like this ongoing conversation,
Yeah.
this learning process for everybody involved, parents and kids.
Okay. And while we're on the topic of like online interactions, we have to address social media.
Yeah.
There are just so many stories out there about cyberbullying and like the devastating impact that it can have on kids.
Right.
Like one article you sent there was a child psychologist talking about this patient who had become totally withdrawn and depressed
Yeah.
because of just like relentless harassment online.
It's heartbreaking.
It really is.
And sadly, it's becoming more and more common.
Yeah.
What we need to remember is that it's not just kids being kids. This is a form of abuse
Right.
with serious and lasting consequences.
You can really mess them up.
It can affect their self-esteem, their mental health, even their future relationships.
So how do we even begin to tackle something like that?
Well, I think prevention is always the best approach.
Okay.
We need to be teaching kids about empathy, online etiquette, being responsible digital citizens.
Like how to be a good human online.
Exactly. And if it does happen, early intervention is key.
Okay.
Parents, educators, mental health professionals, we all need to work together to support the victim, to address the bully's behavior, to create a safe environment for everyone.
It takes a village.
It really does. And it's also important to remember that social media isn't all bad.
Right.
It can be great for connecting with people, building communities, expressing yourself creatively. The key is just finding that balance,
It's like anything else. Too much of a good thing can be a bad thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Moderation and balance are crucial.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential downsides of smartphones, but also some of those inspiring examples of how kids are using tech for good.
Mhm.
But before we get too carried away with the sunshine and rainbows, we need to circle back to that concept you mentioned earlier, digital literacy.
Yep.
It sounds important, but I think a lot of people might not even know what it means.
You're absolutely right. It's a bit of buzzword these days, but it's more than just knowing how to use a smartphone or navigate the internet. It's about having that critical thinking muscle to really evaluate the information that's bombarding us online.
So it's like being able to spot fake news or tell if someone's trying to manipulate you.
Exactly. It's recognizing those hidden biases, those agendas, and making informed choices about how you engage with technology and the content you come across. And honestly, it's a skill that everyone needs these days, not just kids.
I can definitely see how that would be important. I mean, think about all the stuff we see on social media ads disguised as news articles, influencers pushing products. It's hard to keep up sometimes.
It really is, and that's why it's crucial to equip kids with those critical thinking skills early on. Think of it like giving them a mental toolkit to navigate this digital world. We need to teach them how to question what they see online, how to fact check, how to identify reliable sources.
So they don't just blindly believe everything they read online.
Exactly. They need to be able to think for themselves and form their own opinions based on solid evidence. They need to be responsible digital citizens.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this digital literacy thing ties back to everything else we've been talking about. It's not just about using technology safely, it's about using it thoughtfully.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
We often talk about technology as if it's some separate entity, but it's really just a reflection of our society. All the same issues we grapple with in the real world. Bullying, misinformation, social pressure, they all show up online too.
It's almost like technology amplifies those issues.
It absolutely does. And that's why we can't just bury our heads in the sand and hope for the best. It's our responsibility as parents, educators, and as a society to actively shape the digital world into a space that's safe, healthy, and empowering for kids.
It's like we're building a whole new playground with new rules and new challenges. It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
It is, isn't it? We're essentially witnessing the evolution of childhood in real time.
Whoa, now you're making me think even bigger. I love that idea, the evolution of childhood. Each generation faces its own unique set of hurdles and opportunities for our grandparents. It might have been war or economic hardship for our parents. Maybe it was social change or the rise of mass media. And for our kids, it's this whole digital revolution that's changing everything.
And like any revolution, there are going to be growing pains. We're bound to make some mistakes along the way, encounter some unexpected consequences, but there's also the potential for breakthroughs and opportunities that we can't even fathom yet.
It's exciting and a little bit daunting at the same time.
I agree, but what's important is that we approach this with open minds and a willingness to learn and adapt. The decisions we make today will have a ripple effect on the future of childhood, the future of education, even the future of society as a whole.
So we've got a lot of responsibility riding on our shoulders.
We do, but we also have an incredible opportunity to shape the future for the better. Let's make sure those decisions are informed, thoughtful, and guided by a deep understanding of both the risks and the incredible possibilities that technology offers.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the big picture stuff, but let's bring it back down to earth for a minute. What are some practical things our listener can do to help kids navigate the digital world safely and responsibly?
That's a great question. Honestly, one of the simplest yet most important things is to start. Early kids are exposed to technology at such a young age these days, even toddlers. So it's never too early to start having those conversations about online safety, digital citizenship, the importance of finding a balance.
Speaking of balance, I know a lot of parents are concerned about screen time. Is there some kind of magic number they should be aiming for?
Well, as always, there's no one-size-fits-all answer, but the American Academy of Pediatrics has some guidelines that can be helpful for kids under 18 months. They recommend no screen time at all, except for video chatting, for those between 2 and 5 years old. They suggest limiting it to an hour per day of high-quality programming. And for older kids and teens, it's about setting consistent limits and making sure screen time isn't replacing essential things like sleep, physical activity, and, real-life interactions.
So once again, it all comes back to finding that balance. But even with these guidelines, I imagine it's still tricky for parents to navigate, especially when it comes to things like social media. At what age is it okay to let kids have their own accounts?
Most platforms have a minimum age requirement of 13, and there's a reason that younger kids might not be developmentally ready to handle the complexities of social media. They might not have the maturity or the emotional resilience to deal with things like cyberbullying, social pressure, or exposure to inappropriate content.
So 13 is a good rule of thumb, but even then, it's not just a free-for-all, right?
It's
Right.
crucial to have those open conversations about responsible social media use and to set clear boundaries. It's also a good idea to monitor their activity, at least initially, and to teach them how to protect their privacy and report any inappropriate behavior.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the risks, but I want to make sure we don't lose sight of the amazing opportunities that technology offers. There are so many fantastic educational apps, creative tools, and online resources available to kids these days. Like a whole new world of learning and exploration is at their fingertips.
Absolutely, and that's what makes this conversation so fascinating. Technology can be such a powerful tool for good when it's used intentionally and thoughtfully. We need to make sure we're guiding kids towards those positive uses and helping them develop the skills to create, connect, and learn in meaningful ways.
It's like we're walking this tightrope between wanting to protect them from the risks while also empowering them to explore the possibilities.
That's a great analogy. It's
Yeah.
about finding that sweet spot, embracing the potential while also acknowledging and mitigating the risks. And that's a conversation that needs to be ongoing. Technology is constantly evolving, which means our strategies for navigating it need to evolve too.
It's definitely not a one-and-done conversation.
Exactly. As parents, educators, and members of society, we have a responsibility to stay informed, stay engaged, and stay committed to raising a generation of digital citizens who are savvy, responsible, and empowered.
You know, something that's really been resonating with me throughout this conversation is the idea that it's not just about what we teach our kids, but also about how we model those behaviors ourselves. They're
Yeah.
watching us even when we don't realize it.
You're so right. Kids are like sponges, absorbing everything they see and hear. If we want them to have a healthy and balanced relationship with technology, we need to demonstrate what that looks like.
Which means being mindful of our own screen time,
Yeah.
setting boundaries for ourselves, and showing them that there's a whole world out there beyond those screens. Exactly.
It's about living a life that's rich and fulfilling both online and offline, and proving to our children that technology can be a tool to enhance our lives, not take over.
Okay, I feel like we've covered so much ground here. We've talked about the potential risks of technology, the importance of digital literacy, the evolving landscape of childhood. It's a lot to take in.
It is, but if there's one key takeaway for our listener, it's this: it's all about balance, open communication, and a commitment to raising a generation that can navigate the digital world thoughtfully, responsibly, and confidently.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that leads us perfectly into the next part of our discussion. We've talked a lot about what not to do, but what about all the positive things technology can offer?
That's what we'll explore next. How
Yeah.
can we harness this technology to nurture creativity, learning, and connection? There's a lot to unpack there, and I'm excited to dive in.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about what not to do, but what about all the positive things technology can offer?
That's what we'll explore next.
Okay.
How can we harness this technology to nurture creativity, learning, and connection? There's a lot to unpack there,
There is.
and I'm excited to dive in.
I am too. So, all right, so where do we start?
One of the best things we can do is encourage kids to be creators,
Okay.
not just consumers of technology.
I like that creators, not just consumers. So instead of just like passively scrolling through social media or watching videos, we should be encouraging them to make their own videos, design their own websites, or even code their own apps.
Exactly.
I mean, there are so many incredible resources available these days online and in communities to help them get started.
There are, and it doesn't have to be, this big, complicated, expensive project to get them started.
Right.
Even something as simple as using a smartphone camera to make a stop-motion animation or using a free drawing app to create digital art
Yeah.
can be incredibly empowering for kids.
Yeah, I love that it's about giving them the tools to create and share their own stories, their own perspectives, and who knows, maybe they'll even discover a passion that could turn into a future career.
Absolutely. The possibilities are endless. And it's not just about technical skills either.
Right.
These creative endeavors can also foster critical thinking, collaboration, and communication skills, all of which are essential for success in the 21st century.
It's true. It's funny when we think about technology and kids, we often jump to, screen time and social media and all the concerns.
Yeah.
But we sometimes forget that technology can also be this incredibly powerful tool for learning and self-discovery.
Yeah. It's all about perspective, right? Just like we wouldn't throw out a hammer because someone could potentially misuse it.
Right.
We shouldn't dismiss the incredible potential of technology just because of its risks.
Makes sense.
The key is to use it wisely and thoughtfully.
Okay, and to remember that it's just one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
I think it's also crucial to encourage a balance between online and offline activities.
That's so crucial. We don't want technology to take over their lives.
Right.
It's so important for kids to get outside, play with friends, engage in hobbies, explore their community.
Yeah.
Those real-world experiences are just as valuable, if not more so, than anything they can find online.
Yeah, it's about nurturing their whole selves, not just their digital selves.
Exactly. It's about finding that healthy balance.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the potential downsides of smartphones,
Yeah.
the importance of digital literacy, the evolving landscape of childhood. It's a lot to take in.
It is a lot.
But I think what's most important is that we keep having these conversations,
For sure.
that we stay informed, stay engaged, and stay curious.
Absolutely. And most importantly, talk to your kids.
Yeah.
Listen to their perspectives and work together to navigate this ever-evolving digital landscape.
Because ultimately it's about empowering them to be, responsible, thoughtful, and creative digital citizens who can use technology for good.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of this part of our deep dive into the world of smartphones and kids. We've covered a lot of ground, from the potential downsides to the inspiring possibilities.
It's been a pleasure sharing these insights with you and our listener.
And we hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought, and maybe even sparked some conversations at your own dinner table.
Yeah.
Remember, it's an ongoing journey, and we're all in this together.
Thanks for joining us.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep. So we talked about the downsides in digital literacy, and now I want to shift gears a bit and talk about how we can use this technology for good.
Okay, yeah.
You mentioned earlier that we should encourage kids to be creators, not just consumers of technology.
Right.
What does that actually look like?
It's about moving beyond passively scrolling through social media or watching videos and encouraging them to actually make their own content.
Okay.
Making their own videos, designing websites, even coding their own apps.
Oh,
And the resources to learn these skills are more accessible than ever.
that's true. There are so many free online tutorials, coding camps, even after-school programs that can
Yeah.
help kids learn these skills.
There are. And it doesn't have to be, this huge, complicated, expensive project either.
Right.
Even something as simple as using a smartphone camera to make a stop-motion animation
Okay.
or learning to edit photos with a free app
Yeah.
can be incredibly empowering for kids.
It's true, and it allows them to express their creativity,
Right.
develop problem-solving skills,
Absolutely.
all at the same time.
Exactly.
I love that it's about giving them the tools to create and share their own stories, their own perspectives, and who knows, maybe they'll even discover a passion that could turn into a future career.
Absolutely. The
Yeah.
possibilities are endless. And it's not just about technical skills either.
Yeah.
These creative endeavors can also foster critical thinking, collaboration, communication skills,
Right.
all of which are essential for success, in the 21st century.
It's funny when we think about technology and kids, we often jump to screen time and social media and all the concerns.
Yeah.
But we forget that technology can also be this incredibly powerful tool for learning and self-discovery.
It's all about perspective,
Yeah.
right? Just like we wouldn't throw out a hammer because someone could potentially misuse it.
Right.
We shouldn't dismiss the potential of technology just because of the risks.
Okay.
The key is to use it wisely and thoughtfully.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
And to remember that it's just one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
I think it's also crucial to encourage a balance between online and offline activities.
That's so important. We don't want technology to take over their lives. It's so important for kids to get outside, play with friends, engage in hobbies, explore their communities. Real-world experiences are just as valuable, if not more so,
It's true.
than anything they can find online.
It's about nurturing their whole selves, not
Well,
just their digital self.
Exactly. It's about finding that healthy balance.
This has been such a thought-provoking conversation.
It has.
I feel like we've only scratched the surface of this complex topic.
It is complex, and there's no easy answer.
Right.
The impact of smartphones on kids is multifaceted, with both potential benefits and risks.
But I think the most important thing is that we keep these conversations going.
Absolutely.
We stay informed, stay engaged, and stay curious.
Yes. And most importantly, talk to your kids.
Yeah.
Listen to their perspective and work together to navigate this ever-evolving digital world.
Because ultimately, it's about empowering them to be responsible, thoughtful, creative digital citizens who can use technology for good.
Well said.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the world of smartphones and kids.
It's been a pleasure.
It has. We've covered a lot of ground, from the potential downsides to the inspiring possibilities.
We have.
And we hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought and maybe even sparked some conversations at your own dinner table.
For sure.
Remember, it's an ongoing journey and we're all in this together.
Thanks for joining us.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.